ocean's unfathomable depths, a gigantic, man-like creature appears.
Welcome back, my fellow agents. It is I, your crazy kaijuologist. I'm still working on that one. It's still a work in progress, shall we say, if you will. But it's X7, the host of Zenorama, the podcast of heroes and monsters. Today we're going to be talking about Frankenstein Conquers the World, the AIP version, of course, because that's the trailer you're going to be hearing. And really, if it's not going to be subtitled, then what's the point in actually showing you or if I'm not showing you any video. Not that I don't have it. I do have a reconstructed version of the AIP one because, as we'll get to in a little while, there were two versions. So I did recently watch this AIP version as presented by James H. Nicholson and Samuel Z. Arkoff. Fortunately, I don't think I got the AIP logo. How sad for me. And you. But before we get too much further into this, please like, share, subscribe, vote in the poll, and leave a comment. If you're watching on YouTube or listening or watching on Spotify, please watch for a couple more, at least listen and watch for a couple minutes. It really helps the algorithm. I'd really appreciate it. All right. So Frankenstein Conquers the World. This all the movie came about through the original King Kong versus Frankenstein. See, even by the 60s, they were referring to the creature as Frankenstein rather than the creature of Frankenstein, the monster of Frankenstein, whatever you want to call him. I think Lou Costello had a lot to do with that, and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein because Lou was calling him Frankie or Junior the whole movie. So I have some thoughts about that. But be that as it may, this was known in Japan as, let me get under here, Frankenstein versus Subterranean Monster Baragon. I think Frankenstein Conquers the World is far more exploitative. But, Frankenstein versus Baragon isn't the worst thing it could be. It was released on August 8th, 1965 in Japan, and then about a year later, July 8th, 1966 by American International Pictures. And then, of course, the sequel is War of the Gargantuas a year later in Japan and 4 years later in the States. But that's a movie and a story for another time. So let's get on here. We'll get let's do a little more sound effects. We only have 2 minutes, so it's going to be in short spurts. There's Baragon. So Baragon right there. I'm not spoiling anything, I don't think, by telling you that there's Frankenstein fights Baragon. Played by Haruo Nakajima, the original Godzilla actor. Frankie himself, or Junior maybe. Well, it's not Junior, but Frankie himself was played by Koju Furuhata as the full-size creature, and the younger monster was Sumio Nakao. So there you go. And we go. There's the man himself, the legend. I don't think he needs too much explanation, but Ultraman, re-recorded by Titan Productions, which means that this is Peter Fernandez and that crew. You'll hear a lot of famous, or at least familiar voices. And Salvatore Billatelli, I helped with that. Tomoyuki Tanaka, finally, executive producers. And directed by, this is the Inoshiro Honda, because of the way you could sometimes read the kanji, but Ishiro Honda is what it should have said. But they didn't have this was 1966, so there were some things. This happened more than once. And of course, there's the Toho and Henry G. Saperstein, the father of Godzilla in America, according to some. Although this is not a Godzilla movie. So we start the movie in Germany, in a frost-bitten, snow-covered German castle. And I don't know if that is... it's Dr. Reisendorf. It's not Dr. Frankenstein, though he acts a lot like it. What you see there is the container with the heart of the legendary Frankenstein monster. There's Baragon again because I deleted pictures and some took their place when watching it again, a second time, I suppose. He's very cute, isn't he? So that's Germany. The Japanese go to Germany to get the heart of the monster and take it to Japan. We're not 100% sure why, but according to legend, especially by this time, the Frankenstein monster is immortal, or his heart is at least immortal. And there's reason to see in all of the movies that aren't about the doctor, like the Hammer movies are more about the doctor than the monster or the creature, since the doctor is really, or Peter Cushing as Henry Frankenstein is Frankenstein, if you want to say it correctly, is the monster in the movies. He just builds other things that he uses, but he's the true monster. And then it's going all the way. I mean, it went down, spent 6 months in a leaky boat, and over to Japan. So go figure. But then guess what happens? It's on a submarine, the Allies bomb it, or torpedo it. But they get it there. Oh, there it is. There is the heart of the monster as it beats away. Dun, 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 dun. It's a bit of a chicken heart. There you go. And he'll tell you that right there is, well, I'm looking here, somebody famous. We're not going to do much. Have you ever heard about Everyone's heard about Frankenstein. He's one of the most, who hasn't? And then they get the heart to Tokyo, or probably not Tokyo, but the atomic bomb drops. And they forget about it. It's lost for years. Ooh, there's some familiar footage from Godzilla versus the Thing. All right. So now they're discussing these mysterious things that are going on. Wrecks and animals disappearing. Look, over here is the famous Charles Knight Lalops, or Allosaurus as it's known now, diorama, and a pretty decent, for the time being, I think that's a T-Rex. 15 years later, that's when it's happening now. So the bomb was dropped in 1946, 45, so 15 years. This would be 1960. There's Hiroshima. And so there's a little time discrepancy there. The movie's set 5 years after that. But they found the boy who's eating the various animals because he's starving. And he's a feral boy. And he's an unusual boy. His eyes glow. So beautiful. This obviously shot outside with and then this is just I don't know why they insisted upon this, but abandoned by a prostitute GI is the implication there. And a full-blooded white boy. He is not a full-blooded. I don't know who they were trying to fool here, but I don't think anyone, said that. So there is Nick Adams right there, the rebel himself. And this is Tadao Takashima. And we don't see Kumi Mizuno yet. And Nick went over there, did 3 movies, Monster Zero, this one, and The Killing Bottle. One, I don't know. It's got to be around somewhere by this point in time. Some enterprising fans would have subtitled it because, Nick Adams. So here's some, these were inserts for the American version. As I said, it was a bit different, but, and there's Baragon again. So they're blaming the Frankenstein creature on a lot of damage. Now, he did eat, and they thought he was eating people. It's not him. But they say that Frankenstein's eyes glow in the dark. They have an unnatural glow. They're supposed to, but obviously Baragon there has glowing eyes and a glowing horn. Like I said, he's pretty cute. And at one point, the boy escapes, and his hand actually breaks out because they're taking pictures of him, and it's like they never saw King Kong. You just don't take pictures of something that's chained up. but the hand is growing. So there's a couple of theories here that people have spouted. Either the heart grew a whole body back, which just seems like highly unlikely to me. I mean, obviously it's 60s science fiction, so you gotta take it for what it is. That's the theory in the movie. And if they'd have fed the hand long enough, it would have grown another whole Frankenstein monster. Now, this goes into play in the next movie, obviously, War of the Gargantuas. But be that as it may, there's also the theory that a young Japanese boy who was starving in Nakajima, jeez, well, anyway, he's starving, and he finds the heart in Hiroshima and just eats it because he's hungry, and then that kind of takes over, or it absorbs into his body, or because it's probably chewed up and ground finely. So it just kind of takes over. So he'd still be Japanese, which would explain why he looks Japanese. And so here we're moving quite quickly through the movie, which is fine. They go back. They figure out that there is another monster present because he's eating everything, and the Frankenstein boy can't travel back and forth quickly. He does like to swim though, and there are scenes where you can see one of his hands is kind of stumpy, but it does grow back. There's Kumi in all her glory. She was probably dubbed by Corinne or maybe somebody else. They didn't give a list of dub crew here in frickin' Wikipedia. So, yeah, he looks a little Caucasian there, I guess, but not really. And these are the go-go dancers. Let's do a little more of the trailer here, so you don't have to listen to me jibber jabber.
From the fiery depths of the earth comes a prehistoric mastodon of destruction. Never before has the screen known such heart-stopping terror. Starring Nick Adams.
Well, I feel he's very important from a scientific point of view.
And he is. Dr. Bowen is a considerate man, and he's treating people for radiation in Hiroshima. And Dr. Kenichiro Kawaji and Kumi Mizuno is Dr. Sueko Tagami, pardon me. I don't remember if they ever call themselves doctor, but she does. We're about to hear that. And of course, the Frankenstein monster is enamored of her because they just happens all the time. But he's very gentle with people, actually.
I'd have to cut off a leg or an arm.
Doctors, I won't let you conduct this test.
Frankenstein, with the strength of 1,000 men. And every man's need for affection that makes him a willing captive.
The chain hurts you.
He's not quite Boris Karloff, but he'll do, considering I don't know if he was dubbed or not. The Dr. Goro Naya voiced Nick Adams in the Japanese version. Dr. Kawaji wanted to cut a leg off and see if it would grow back. They tried to keep the hand alive, but it crawled out of the protein solution and then died. Go figure. A hand just doesn't know what's good for it. But and he finally gives up on cutting up the creature itself, the Frankenstein. Well, we'll just call him Frankenstein. It's just going to be easier. Frankenstein. And finally gives up when Frankenstein saves his life. So, and they throw bombs at Baragon and try to help out, but nothing really works. So it's a good movie, and it adds a little something to the Frankenstein lore, like turning him giant.
The new scoop of the century.
The new scoop is the hand moving.
Horrifying touch of a severed hand with a life of its own. Terrifying force of a monster that dwarfs man's tallest structures.
Oh, AIP, boy, could you make a trailer go? They don't even fight in the city ever. I mean, it's barely there. And it makes sense because they wanted to save people and get them away from there. Baragon can tunnel through rock. It's got that heat beam. Now, as we'll see with some publicity stills, it was a lightning bolt So I was kind of surprised to see it for the first time at 3 in the morning. But there he goes, tunnel, tunnel. There's his heat beam, and it sounds a lot like a certain King of the Monsters atomic breath, but he's got these nice sharp claws. The Margon suit was used after this for Ultraman, and we will see it several times. And so it was too dilapidated. It wasn't in good condition for Destroy All Monsters, which is one of these we will do after our first anniversary. I'll be doing some of the early ones so I can use more pictures and talk about it that way. Nakajima-san, Haruo Nakajima-san choreographed the fight. So the early, it looks a lot like Ultraman because he played a lot of the monsters and choreographed a lot of those fights. Look at those ears. He kind of looks like a pug on occasion, but cuter. Sorry, Frog. So we're getting here. Okay, this is toward the end, the second ending, right? You don't actually hear the snap of the broken neck, but that's how he kills Baragon. Then there's a big earthquake with all that fire, and Frankenstein, the giant Frankenstein monster, is gone forever. Or is he? Sort of. I mean, when we talk about War of the Gargantuas and its two versions, we'll just leave that open for opinion. So now we're going to look at some of the publicity. There are toys, but I didn't bother with this. Since the whole Frankenstein name and everything is in public domain now, probably was even by then. That's why anyone could use it. Why you have a gazillion. There's a nice picture of an Allosaurus, or maybe something like that. It's got the 3 fingers, so it's not a T-Rex. See, look, lightning bolts. This would have been confusing. I'm assuming that they took these pictures but didn't know what kind of power Baragon would have, even in Japan at the time, and wanted to get him out there. The movie would still be in post, so the animators hadn't decided what to do. So they just used Ghidra's lightning bolts, which is funny because in the publicity stills for Ghidra, he's got pencil-thin flames coming out of all 3 of his heads. Go figure. And there again, lightning bolts, tanks. These are good picks. These are from the press kit. Another one. Just a great size difference. Baragon is taller than Frankenstein, which is important because it gives Frankenstein the underdog, making him the default good guy, battling the monster heel, if you will. I think we got some more sound. No, there's no tanks shooting at these beasts. Either Frankenstein monster, Poral, what's his name? Baragon. So here's one of the publicity lobby cards that would have been out in the theater. Copyright 1966, American International. Oops, sorry, Heritage. We're going to hide that. And here, when it was on television, that station I have watched, Channel 6. San Diego's is not anymore. I don't know what it is now, but this would have probably been from the 70s or even early 80s, they did these monster weeks. But neither of those. This is from Son of Frankenstein. There's Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi as Igor, or Igor, if you will, Frederick Frankenstein, the terrifying monster of all. And more publicity. This is Channel 7. That might be LA. And here's the Super 8 movie, which rolls the movie into about 8 minutes. It does a pretty good job. That was the first home video version. And there's the famous monsters of Filmland. I saw the reprint, which we'll see a little bit of in FM 114. I'm not 100% sure if that's a Go-Go's cover or not. He looks like he's either blind or he's got his eyes closed. But look at those veins. Here's a campaign manual or press kit. Synopsis. Just that's the only part I have of it. And let's talk about the original first ending. Now, you all know I love giant octopi. I love octopi of any kind. This was the first ending. They were going to have, after he defeats Baragon by breaking his neck, an octopus suddenly appears inland. That's a lake back there, back here. That is not the ocean. This octopus just suddenly shows up, grabs the monster, grabs Frankenstein, pulls him. They have a bit of a tussle, but he pulls him into the water, and that's it. End of movie. It doesn't make any sense thematically. I love the scene. It was an extra on the Japanese Laserdisc many years ago, so you could choose which ending you wanted to see. And when the American home DVD came out, they did that. And I believe that's the version I still have. It's been a minute since I've watched it because I've got it here on the laptop. But there's the giant devilfish. This is from the Frankenstein article there. So Forey talks about how he doesn't always get good information in this. And there you go. And none of this happens. And it was a mystery to all of us. Was there another movie? Frankenstein versus the Devilfish? Was it a sequel? We didn't know. And it sort of happened in the next one, in War of the Gargantuas, because this is Odako, who is supposed to be the same octopus from Godzilla versus King Kong versus Godzilla, and then this one, Frankenstein, and then the sequel, War of the Gargantuas, where the green gargantua pummels it, and it probably leaves, but survives. So, I can't believe that this word here. I'm not saying it, but it makes me laugh because you wouldn't put that in there now. So, there's all this stuff about how the translations didn't come through properly. It's interesting. I think that it was wise that they went back and took out the scene and replaced it with Frankenstein winning and then, being destroyed or at least imprisoned, entombed by the fire and the earthquake and never to be seen again. But the official U.S. release, original Japanese feature, had the same dub, and the U.S. feature exactly, except that this one had the octopus ending, this one had the other one, and I think, it's been so long since I watched either of these that I don't remember 100%, so forgive me. But they did have the octopus version in here, which is nice, but like I said, just stops the movie dead. It's like, okay, what? It doesn't make any sense either. Why would this creature just show up? Why would a cephalopod show up and decide to attack Frankenstein? So the U.S. edit also has a little other difference. They edited some. He's a little more violent in the original part when he's because he starts out as a small child, but he gets big pretty fast. But he shows him being more vicious. He causes some car wrecks intentionally, and they tried to make him more of the engine of destruction that he'd become in many of the other, without the pathos that Karloff gave him. More like the Glenn Strange monster who was just out there to destroy things. Japanese version's a little, you do feel for him because you realize he's just misunderstood, so to speak. Be that as it may, that is our movie today. And I hope I haven't gone too much into the detail that everyone knows. I really like it. It's hard for me to decide which Toho Frankenstein movie I like best. Either, this one or War of the Gargantuas, because they're both different and wonderful in different ways. That's what I should say. But be that as it may, agents, this is X7. I hope you've enjoyed your hummus of perfection. Until our next assignment, this is X7 signing off.